welcome to Bad at Goodbyes. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, nearing the edges of extinction. So we'll share species research, information, and conservation proposals, and then we'll spend part of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll form a soundscape of gentleness, of reflection, of delight, and perhaps of grieving. Without conservation activity and significant societal shift, many of these species may not survive the 21st century. So perhaps we might acknowledge their journey with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, and with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the Brown's Banksia. The Brown's Banksia is a critically endangered flowering shrub native to southwestern Australia, about 200 miles south of Perth in the state of Western Australia. Its scientific name is Banksia brownii, and it was first described in 1830. The Brown's Banksia is a medium to large shrub that, on the wind-swept peaks of its habitat, grows low and bushy, ranging from 3 to 10 feet in height. Though some individuals of the same species, found in more sheltered valleys and ravines, develop into a more open, branching small tree, reaching up to 20 feet in height. Botanists will describe plants using familiar terms like tree or shrub or bush, which are super useful to get a quick idea of what a plant may look like, but these are not formal scientific classifications. For example, there is no universal consensus on how tall a plant must be to be considered a tree, not a shrub. And there's a lot of perhaps intentional ambiguity in these descriptors because, as we see with our Banksia, a plant's environment can influence its growth form. So hard delineations may in fact confuse species identification. So then the Brown's Banksia is a woody perennial. That means it has wood stems and branches and has a multiple year life cycle of growth and dormancy and can develop a shrub-like growth form and appearance or a tree-like growth form and appearance based on environment and growing conditions. It is sometimes referred to as the feather-leaved Banksia because each leaf is divided into as many as 70 thin, slightly curved lobes, creating a soft, delicate, feather-like appearance. The top side of the leaves, the adaxial side, are dark green, and the bottom, the abaxial side, are light green, covered in fine white hairs. These hairs are called trichomes, and they help prevent water loss by trapping a thin layer of humid air right against the surface of the leaf, which slows down rate of evaporation, helping the plant conserve water. Trichomes are also a physical barrier to deter grazing by small leaf-eating insects, simply making it more difficult to walk on the leaf surface and to feed on the leaf itself. You get a mouthful of hair. The brown Banksia's leaves are long and narrow, measuring roughly up to 5 inches in length and a 1/4 inch wide. Its bark is smooth, brownish gray, and marked with lenticels. These are small pores that aid in plant respiration, breathing. The brown Banksia's flower is unusual and striking. It grows from the ends of the stems in a flower spike growth form. In the literature I reviewed, this flower form is frequently described as looking like a bottle brush. But if you are anything like me, like not born in the 1800s, and have no idea what a bottle brush looks like, a less poetical but perhaps more evocative image is it kind of looks like a toilet brush. But like the prettiest toilet brush you've ever seen. The flower spike is about 6 inches in height and 3 inches in diameter with a bristly appearance. It's a cluster, an inflorescence of hundreds of individual flowers spiraling around the stem. Each individual flower has a tiny, thin, long, wiry style, that's the female pollen receptor, that bends downward, giving the flower spike a wispy, bristly, brushy appearance. The Banksia's stamen, that's the pollen-producing male reproductive organ, are tucked away in a small, spoon-like depression in the bud, and as the flower opens and the style grows outward, it scrapes past the stamen, collecting its own pollen onto a specialized tip on the style called a pollen presenter, which it then presents to pollinators. The brown Banksia, like many Banksia species, produces a lot of nectar, and its bright flower spikes are a rich food source for a diversity of animals. It flowers between March and August, peaking in June, and is pollinated by birds like the New Holland honeyeater, the western spinebill, and the red wattlebird, by mammals like the honey possum and the bushrat, and by insects like the western honeybee, and occasionally by flies and ants. brown Banksia has a mixed mating system, meaning it can both self-pollinate and cross-pollinate. So an individual plant can pollinate itself and produce viable seeds, and/or it can be pollinated by other individuals of its species and produce viable seeds. Once pollinated, the flower spike develops into a strong, woody structure, looking a bit like a corn cob. It's embedded with dozens of follicles. These are tiny, dry fruits, each holding a single seed. These seeds are mainly dispersed by serotomy. So the small, dry, hard fruit remains on the plant, sealed, protecting the seed within, and they do not open and release until they are exposed to fire. Generally, the fire will kill the parent plant. It is not particularly fire adapted, but in the process will release this accumulation of these stored seeds. Seeds have a tiny wing to aid in wind dispersal, drifting from the dying parent plant into ashen, nutrient-enriched soils, now well cleared of competition. When seeds germinate, they are slow growers, taking 5 to 8 years or more to reach reproductive maturity and start flowering, and then needing roughly 15 years total to build up an appreciable seed bank. In the absence of fire, individuals can live up to roughly 50 years, though becoming less productive, more susceptible to disease and deterioration in their old age. So, fire and the frequency of fires plays this vital role in the brown Banksia's life cycle. Too frequent fire kills individuals before they can reproduce or build up a significant seed store. And with too infrequent fire, seeds are not released, populations simply do not reproduce and decline into old age and deterioration. In the dream, the waiting. In the dream, the season upon season with limbs aching. The promise of renewal held fast, though crumbling. 1,000 tiny winged maybes. 1,000 tiny futures deferred, 1,000 questions without answer. And begging for the fire kiss, for sleep, for release. In the dream. The brown Banksia is native to southwestern Australia, to a roughly 1,000 square mile area in the state of Western Australia, between the Stirling Range and the southern coast. Its population is split between two distinct clusters: a higher elevation population scattered in and near the Stirling Range National Park, and a lower elevation population near the coast, near the Australian city of Albany. Its northern population grows on the upper slopes of steep quartzite and sandstone peaks in rocky, low-nutrient soils. Its southern population is found in coastal heathlands, growing in sandy, low-nutrient soils. This region is striking and beautiful. Low-growing vegetation across plains, which swiftly gives rise to the Stirling Range, an isolated chain of mountains first formed over 1 billion years ago. And that ancient tectonic collision has been slowly eroding ever since. Wind, rain, ice, and snow wear away at the land. Softer rocks of the surrounding plains erode more readily than the tough quartzite of the peaks. This process is called differential erosion. The hardened rock remains, now high isolated mountains, while the surrounding land is lowered into the flat plains we see today. A process that has taken multiple millennia. This is a Mediterranean climate with warm summers of highs in the mid-80s Fahrenheit and winter lows that dip into the low 40s with occasional freeze and frosts. The region sees roughly 30 inches of rainfall per year. The brown Banksia shares its habitat with western bristlebird, southern sandplain sun lizard, western ground parrot, red wattlebird, western rosella, sterling myrtle, southwestern cool skink, western spinebill, plant louse, western brush wallaby, Farrell's honeysuckle, Stirling Range tapered snail, New Holland honeyeater, heath dragon, noisy scrub bird, bush rat, western ringtail possum, rufous tree creeper, honey possum, short-winged grasshopper, western whipbill, and many, many more. The primary current threat to the brown Banksia is a human-introduced soil-borne water mold called Phytophthora cinnamomi, which causes a fatal root rot disease. This mold is affecting plant species across Australia, though our Banksia is particularly susceptible to the pathogen. Studies estimate that when brown Banksia is infected, only 5% survive. The mold spreads through the movement of water and contaminated soil. So human activities, development, shipping, vehicle use, foot traffic are believed to have introduced and spread the disease throughout the continent, though the blight is concentrated in southwestern Australia, where we find our Banksia. Additionally, fire management and human-induced climate change resulting in shifts in the frequency of wildfire is affecting the species. As noted, Brown's Banksia is deeply reliant on cycles of wildfire to ensure reproduction and generational regeneration. Lastly, low genetic diversity resulting from low population and the species' self-pollination reproductive strategy is a long-term threat. Fortunately, most of the Brown's Banksia population is found in the protected wildernesses of the Stirling Range National Park, and it is legally protected. Scientists are studying ways to combat the Phytophthora cinnamomi mold and the root rot disease, and a successful translocation program has established 3 new populations of the species. These are groups of individuals moved to a complementary habitat away from blight-infected soils. The Millennial Seed Bank Partnership has collected and stored seeds of the Brown's Banksia in long-term deep freeze. There is an off-site cultivation program in place at Kings Park and Botanical Garden in Perth, with a living collection and a research program focused on the species' genetics, disease resistance, and propagation. Nevertheless, the Brown's Banksia has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 2020, and their population is currently in decline. Our most recent counts estimate that less than 1,000 Brown's Banksia remain in the wild. Information for today's show about the Brown's Banksia was compiled from the Australian government's Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, from the IUCN, from Australasian Plant Conservation, Journal of the Australian Network for Plant Conservation, Volume 27, Number 1, from Biological Conservation, Volume 192, from the Australian Journal of Ecology, Volume 22, from the Australian Journal of Botany, Volume 42, Volume 55, and Volume 71, from the Banksia brownie Interim Recovery Plan, from Adrian Renshaw's doctoral thesis at the University of Western Sydney, and from Wikipedia. For more information about Brown's Banksia conservation, please see the Australian Government's Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water at dcceew.gov And so now I would like to perform some music in hopes of holding space to be in contemplation of the other lives with whom we share our fragile earth. I do not intend to put meaning upon or extract meaning from the Brown's Banksia. Instead, I want this music to simply express my human awe at other species, at other life. And so I will pause in this space of sound and contemplation, and I warmly invite you to join me. I honor the life force of the Brown's Banksia. I will commit its human name to my record. I am so grateful to have shared time on our planet with this complicated being. I lament the ways in which I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. I grieve. And so, in the name of the Brown's Banksia, I pledge to reduce my consumption, my carbon footprint, and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and my inactions. And I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin and their habitat by individuals, corporations, and governments. I forever pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Bada Goodbyes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin. Goodbye.